Welcome to Mysteries and Crime, where we delve into the shadows of humanity's darkest deeds. Tonight we unravel the chilling tale of the Manson Family Murders, a brutal series of crimes that sent shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. But here's the question for you. If one person had made a different choice, could these murders have been prevented? Think carefully and drop your answer in the comments below. In the summer of 1969, a series of gruesome murders terrorized Los Angeles. The victims included Hollywood actress Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant, her friends, and an unsuspecting couple. The killings, orchestrated by cult leader Charles Manson, would become one of the most infamous crimes in American history. The morning of August 9th, 1969 began like any other in Benedict Canyon, Los Angeles. But as housekeeper Winifred Chapman arrived at 100 Cielo Drive, she stumbled upon a nightmarish scene. The once luxurious home was drenched in blood. The lifeless body of Sharon Tate, a rising Hollywood star, lay sprawled on the floor, a rope tied around her neck. Beside her, coffee heiress Abigail Folger lay in a crimson pool, her white nightgown now stained red. Outside, the bodies of Sebring, a celebrity hairstylist, and Wojciech Frykowski, a Polish screenwriter, were found brutally stabbed and shot. A chilling message, PIG, was smeared in blood across the front door. Police officers arriving at the scene were overwhelmed by the sheer brutality. Yet they had no idea this was just the beginning. Less than 24 hours later, another crime scene unfolded at the LaBianca residence. Grocery store owner Leno LaBianca and his wife, Rosemary, were found viciously stabbed, with the words "Death to Pigs" scrawled in blood across the walls. What appeared to be random acts of violence were in reality meticulously planned. But who would commit such horrors? And why? Stay tuned. The next part will take us deeper into the victims, the perpetrators, and the twisted mind of Charles Manson. The victims of the Manson family murders were more than just names in a case file. They were real people with dreams, ambitions, and lives cruelly cut short. At the heart of this tragedy was Sharon Tate, a rising Hollywood actress known for her roles in Valley of the Dolls and The Fearless Vampire Killers. Married to director Roman Polanski, Sharon was 8.5 months pregnant, eagerly anticipating motherhood. She was known for her kindness, beauty, and gentle nature. But on the night of August 8, 1969, she became an unwilling victim of unimaginable brutality. Her friend, Sebring, was a renowned celebrity hairstylist, famous for revolutionizing men's grooming in Hollywood. He had once been engaged to Sharon, but remained close to her and Polanski. That loyalty would cost him his life. Abigail Folger, heiress to the Folgers' coffee fortune, had a sharp mind and a compassionate spirit. She devoted much of her time to social work, but on that fateful night, no amount of kindness could save her. Her boyfriend, Wojciech Frykowski, a Polish screenwriter and aspiring filmmaker, was a close friend of Polanski's. His life ended in a frenzy of violence. One night later, in a separate attack, Leno and Rosemary LaBianca, a wealthy Los Angeles couple, were brutally slain in their own home. Their deaths added another layer of horror to an already incomprehensible crime spree. Each victim had a future until they crossed paths with Charles Manson's twisted vision. At the center of this horrific case was one man, Charles Manson. Manson was a manipulative ex-convict, failed musician, and self-proclaimed prophet. Charismatic, yet deeply disturbed, he built a following of young, impressionable drifters, mostly women, who became known as the Manson family. He preached an apocalyptic vision. he called Helter Skelter, inspired by Beatles' lyrics in which a race war would erupt, and he would emerge as a messianic leader. But he didn't act alone. One of the most infamous of his followers was Susan Atkins, a young woman with a troubled past who became one of Manson's most devoted disciples. It was Atkins who would later boast about the murders in jail, ultimately leading to the case's unraveling. Manson's right-hand man, Charles Tex Watson, carried out much of the violence. He led the charge into Cielo Drive, delivering the first fatal blow to Wojciech Frykowski. Patricia Krenwinkel and Leslie Van Houten were also key participants. Krenwinkel chased down Abigail Folger, stabbing her repeatedly, while Van Houten played a central role in the LaBianca murders. Linda Kasabian, another member of the family, was present but did not participate in the killings. Instead, she later became the prosecution's star witness, providing critical testimony against the others. Together, these individuals turned Manson's apocalyptic delusions into a bloody reality. But the horror was far from over. It began on the night of August 8, 1969. Under the cover of darkness, Charles Tex Watson led a group of Manson family members, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, to 100 Cielo Drive. The sprawling estate had once belonged to music producer Terry Melcher, the man who rejected Charles Manson's dreams of a music career. But Manson didn't care that Melcher no longer lived there. Watson, armed with a revolver and a knife, cut the phone lines before climbing a telephone pole to disable any communication from inside. As they approached the gate, headlights appeared. An 18-year-old named Stephen Parent was driving away after visiting the property's caretaker. Watson stopped him, raised his gun, and fired 4 shots into the teenager's chest. Parent's body slumped against the seat, his final moment stolen by a man he had never met. Inside, the real carnage began. They broke into the house where Sharon Tate, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, and Wojciech Frykowski were gathered. Watson announced, "I am the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business." Jay Sebring tried to protect Sharon but was shot and stabbed repeatedly. Frykowski fought desperately, running toward the front door, but Susan Atkins and Watson overpowered him, stabbing, kicking, and pistol whipping him until his life drained away. Abigail Folger managed to escape onto the lawn, her white nightgown turning scarlet as Patricia Krenwinkel caught up to her, stabbing her over and over again. Sharon Tate, sobbing and pleading for her unborn child, begged for mercy, but mercy never came. Susan Atkins and Watson took turns stabbing her, 16 times. Before leaving, Atkins dipped her fingers into Tate's blood and scrawled PIG across the front door. A haunting message meant to incite fear, but the madness didn't end there. The very next night, Manson himself led a new group, Watson, Krenwinkel, Van Houten, and newcomer Steve Clem Grogan, to the Los Feliz home of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca. Unlike the previous night, Manson entered the home first, tying up Leno and Rosemary before instructing his followers to take over. Leno, a successful businessman, was stabbed 12 times with a carving fork, which was then left protruding from his stomach. The word war was carved into his flesh. Rosemary, forced to listen to her husband's final screams, was stabbed 41 times in a relentless frenzy. Once again, blood was used as a weapon of psychological terror. Messages like "death to pigs" and "Helter Skelter," a misspelling of the Beatles song, were smeared on the walls. 2 nights of horror had left Los Angeles gripped in fear. But the killers, they simply returned to their hideout at Spahn Ranch, laughing, dancing, and waiting for the end of the world that Manson had promised. They thought they were untouchable, but their twisted reign of terror was about to come crashing down. In the immediate aftermath of the Tate-LaBianca murders, law enforcement faced a baffling puzzle. The killings seemed ritualistic, yet entirely random. With no clear suspects and no signs of forced entry, detectives were left scrambling for leads. At first, the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, treated the Tate and LaBianca cases as unrelated. The brutality suggested a personal vendetta, but none of the victims had any known enemies. However, the crime scenes left behind eerie clues, the blood-smeared messages, the overkill, and the strange choice of victims. While the LAPD struggled, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department was investigating a separate case, a violent group of drifters living at Spahn Ranch. They were suspected of auto theft, drug dealing, and strange cult-like behavior. What detectives didn't realize yet was that these two investigations were about to collide in a way that would shock the nation. The forensic examination of the crime scenes was difficult. The murder weapons had been wiped clean, and though bloody footprints were found, they provided little immediate insight. One major challenge was that DNA technology did not exist in 1969. The only way to connect a suspect to the murders was through eyewitness testimony, physical evidence, or confessions. Then, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. In November 1969, Manson family member Susan Atkins was arrested for an unrelated crime. In jail, she boasted about killing Sharon Tate, even describing how she wrote PIG in Tate's blood. Shocked, her cellmates reported the confession to authorities. Suddenly, investigators had their first major lead. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but would they be able to prove it in court? Fear gripped Los Angeles like never before. The brutal nature of the Tate-LaBianca murders shattered the illusion of safety. Even the rich and famous weren't untouchable. Panic spread as headlines warned of a murder cult on the loose. Doors were locked, security systems were installed, and celebrities, once carefree, hired bodyguards. Rumors swirled. Was it the work of a satanic cult? A drug deal gone wrong? Or something even darker? As more details emerged, the idea that a scruffy group of hippies had committed these horrors seemed unbelievable. The world would soon learn the name of Charles Manson, and nothing would ever be the same again. The press devoured the Manson family story. Sensational headlines painted Manson as a demonic mastermind, while his followers were cast as brainwashed soldiers of death. Courtroom sketches and grainy photos of Manson's piercing stare flooded newspapers. His carved swastika became a grotesque symbol of his ideology. News outlets debated endlessly. How did he control them? Could it happen again? Manson, ever the manipulator, loved the attention. He smirked in court, gave cryptic interviews, and fueled his own mythos. But beneath the media frenzy lay a chilling truth. This was no horror movie. These crimes were real, and justice was coming. In the months following the murders, speculation ran wild. Who were the real masterminds? Was there more to the story than met the eye? The most widely accepted theory revolved around Helter Skelter, Manson's apocalyptic prophecy. He believed the murders would ignite a race war, convincing authorities that Black Panthers were responsible, and ultimately allowing him to rise as a leader. Another theory suggested that the Tate murders were a form of revenge. Manson had previously lived at Cielo Drive, and he believed the house's former occupant, music producer Terry Melcher, had betrayed him. Though Melcher had moved out, Manson still sought retribution, tragically, against innocent people. Others questioned if drug debts played a role. Wojciech Frykowski was known to have connections to the drug scene, and some believed the killings were a targeted hit gone too far. But theories aside, one thing was clear. Manson and his followers had to face justice. The trial of Charles Manson and his followers became one of the most infamous in American history. It began in June 1970, lasting nearly 9 months. Manson, ever the manipulator, turned the courtroom into a spectacle. He carved a swastika into his forehead, disrupted proceedings, and influenced his followers to behave bizarrely, including shaving their heads in loyalty. Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, and Tex Watson all took the stand. None showed remorse. Instead, they repeated Manson's rhetoric, seemingly under his spell. Finally, in January 1971, the verdict was reached, guilty on all counts. Manson and his followers were sentenced to death, later commuted to life in prison after California abolished the death penalty. But even behind bars, Manson's influence never faded, and his legacy remains a dark stain on history. In the early days of the investigation, theories ran wild. Some believed the murders were linked to drug deals gone bad, while others whispered about Hollywood cults. The brutality and randomness made it difficult to pinpoint a single motive. Then Charles Manson's disturbing philosophy came to light. He claimed that Helter Skelter, a supposed apocalyptic race war, was coming, and the killings were meant to incite chaos. But was this really the motive? Some experts believe Manson orchestrated the murders to send a message, not to society, but to Terry Melcher, the music producer who rejected his dreams. Cielo Drive had once been Melcher's home, and Manson may have believed the murders would serve as revenge. Regardless of motive, the killers had left behind plenty of evidence, and the trial that followed would be one of the most infamous in history. The trial of Charles Manson and his followers began in June 1970. Prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi laid out a compelling case, showing how Manson manipulated his followers into killing for him. Manson, ever the showman, turned the courtroom into a spectacle. He carved a swastika into his forehead, interrupted proceedings, and attempted to intimidate the jury with his eerie stare. His followers, still under his spell, shaved their heads and chanted his name outside the courthouse. But the jury wasn't swayed. On January 25, 1971, Charles Manson, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, and Patricia Krenwinkel were found guilty of first-degree murder. Leslie Van Houten was convicted of the LaBianca murders. Originally sentenced to death, their sentences were later commuted to life in prison when California abolished the death penalty in 1972. But even behind bars, Manson's influence would linger. Even with Charles Manson long dead, the Manson family murders continued to haunt the public imagination. Were there other victims we may never know about? Some investigators believe there could be additional unsolved murders tied to Manson's cult, cases that never made it to trial. And what about the surviving Manson family members? Many remain in prison, with Leslie Van Houten becoming the first to be released in 2023. Could any of them still hold secrets? One thing is certain: the horror of those nights in 1969 will never be forgotten. But could a different decision have changed history? The Manson family murders changed Hollywood forever. The free-spirited hippie era of the 60s came to a screeching halt. People no longer saw flower children as peaceful wanderers, but as potential killers lurking in the dark. Security became a priority. Gated communities, home alarm systems, and personal bodyguards became the new normal in Los Angeles. Manson's influence even stretched into pop culture. His crimes inspired books, movies, and music. But beyond the headlines and the fear, one truth remains. Innocent lives were stolen, and a twisted vision led to unimaginable bloodshed. So now, we turn the question to you. Could a single different decision have prevented the Manson family murders? What if Terry Melcher had signed Charles Manson to a record deal? What if Sharon Tate had left town that week? Let us know your theories in the comments below. And remember, stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe.